You get paid, and for a moment, everything feels fine. There's no stress, no panic, no sense that something is wrong. You don't rush to buy anything expensive. You don't do anything reckless. You go on with your life like a responsible adult. You check the balance, maybe not at the number, and then you move on with your day. Then time passes. 2 weeks later, maybe less, you open your bank app and feel that familiar confusion creeping in. Not anger, not guilt, not even disappointment, really. Just confusion. A quiet, nagging confusion that sits in your chest while you stare at the numbers trying to piece together what happened. You scroll through recent transactions looking for the culprit, some big mistake you made, some purchase you regret. But there's nothing dramatic. Just normal stuff. Groceries, gas, a few takeout orders. Nothing that should have made this much of a dent. And you ask the same question you've asked 100 times before. Where did it go? Your money didn't disappear. It didn't vanish into thin air. Nobody stole it. You spent it, just not on purpose. And that's exactly what this video is about. Not the big financial mistakes people make, but the quiet ones. The ones that don't feel like mistakes at all until you're staring at your account 2 weeks later, wondering how you ended up here again. Before we go any further, let me make something clear. I'm not judging you. This problem doesn't belong to irresponsible people. It belongs to people who are trying. People who work, pay their bills, and mostly do what they're supposed to do. People who aren't buying luxury cars or booking trips to Europe every other month. That's why it feels so frustrating. Because on paper, your life makes sense. You're not out of control. You're not lazy. You're not reckless. You show up to work. You handle your responsibilities. You're doing what adults are supposed to do. And yet, month after month, the money slips away quietly like water through your fingers. This isn't a character flaw. It's not a discipline issue. And most of the time, it's not even an income problem, though I know it can feel that way. It's a structure problem. And structure problems don't get fixed by trying harder or feeling worse about yourself. They get fixed by changing the system. Most people think the solution is a better budget, a more detailed spreadsheet, a smarter app with push notifications and color-coded categories, something more complex. That sounds logical, but it misses the real issue entirely. The real problem isn't how detailed your budget is. It's when decisions are made. When the paycheck arrives, most people don't make any real decisions at all. The money hits the account and just sits there, available, flexible, waiting. It feels safer that way, like keeping your options open, like being responsible by not doing anything drastic. But money that has no clear job slowly finds the worst ones. Here's what actually happens. You wake up on a Tuesday morning running late. You tell yourself you'll pack lunch later this week, but today you're just going to grab something. $8, maybe 12. Not a big deal. Then on the way home, you stop for gas, and while you're there, you grab a drink and a snack because you're tired and it's been a long day. Another $6. That evening, you're too exhausted to cook, so you order something. $30 with tip and delivery. Nothing feels wrong in the moment. That's the problem. Small expenses pile up. Convenience takes over. You're not spending wildly. You're not being irresponsible. You're spending passively. And passive spending is how money disappears without you ever noticing. It's the lunch you didn't pack because you were running late. The subscription you forgot to cancel. The slightly nicer version of something you bought because it was only a few dollars more. None of it feels significant in the moment. All of it adds up by the end of the month. Your brain treats fresh money differently than money that's already been sitting in your account for a while. New money feels temporary, like it needs to be used before it becomes real savings, before it gets locked into something serious. It's why people feel more comfortable spending right after payday than they do a week later when the balance has dropped. The number might be the same, but psychologically it feels different. Money doesn't disappear. You spend it quietly in ways that feel justified at the time and forgettable a week later. Here's where a lot of people get stuck, and I completely understand why. Payday feels like a reward, like a reset, like permission to relax a little and stop worrying for a minute. And I get that feeling. I really do. You worked for this money, you earned it, you showed up, did the work, dealt with whatever your job throws at you. Of course, it feels like something to celebrate. It's the same feeling you get when you finish a big project or make it through a tough week. There's this sense of release of having made it through. Your shoulders drop a little, the tension fades, and your brain starts looking for ways to reward itself for getting through another pay period. But payday isn't a reward, it's a responsibility. The moment your paycheck hits your account is the most important financial moment of the month. Not because you're about to spend it, but because that's when you decide what won't happen to it. That's when you draw the lines. That's when you create the boundaries that keep your money from drifting into places it shouldn't go. If you don't decide first, life will decide for you. And life is very good at spending your money for you. Life doesn't care about your goals or your plans or that thing you've been saving for. Life just keeps moving and your money moves with it. A friend suggests dinner, a sale pops up on something you've been thinking about. Your car makes a weird noise. A birthday comes up. None of these things are emergencies, but all of them feel necessary enough to justify spending. And because the money is just sitting there, available, with no specific job assigned to it, it goes wherever the moment takes it. Most financial stress doesn't come from one big mistake. It comes from dozens of small ones that felt harmless at the time. A little convenience here, a subscription there, small upgrades that don't feel dangerous on their own, an extra streaming service, a nicer brand at the grocery store, ordering delivery instead of cooking because you were tired. This is why people don't feel guilty. They feel confused. There's no single bad decision to point at, no moment where you clearly messed up. Just a pattern that repeats every month. So subtle, you don't even notice it's happening until the damage is already done. What you do in the first 24 hours after getting paid matters more than everything you do afterward. Because once the money starts moving without direction, control is already gone. Once it's sitting there, available and unassigned, it starts getting absorbed by daily life. Not by emergencies, not by disasters, just by normal, everyday things that feel reasonable in the moment. It's like, here's what people don't realize. Every decision you make during the day drains a little bit of your mental energy. By the time you get home from work, you've already made hundreds of small choices: what to wear, what to eat, which route to take, how to handle that email, how to respond to that text. And each one chips away at your ability to make good decisions later. This is why people spend more money in the evening than they do in the morning. This is why you order takeout at 8 p.m. even though you told yourself you'd cook. This is why financial decisions made at the end of a long day are almost always worse than the ones you'd make right after you get paid, when your mind is still fresh. The longer you wait to assign your money a job, the more decisions you'll have to make about it later when you're tired and when your judgment is already worn down. And that's when passive spending takes over. That's when money starts slipping away without you noticing. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already 2 weeks in and asking yourself where it all went. There's a reason this keeps happening even when people know better, even when they've been through this cycle before and told themselves it won't happen again. In Atomic Habits, James Clear explains that small, repeated behaviors compound over time, whether they're good or bad. The things we do consistently, even tiny things, create results that feel way bigger than the actions themselves. This is one of those behaviors. Doing nothing when you get paid feels harmless. It doesn't register as a decision. It's just letting things sit for a minute while you figure out what to do. But repeated every month, it quietly creates financial stress. Not because you're irresponsible, but because systems beat intentions every time. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if there's no system in place to support them, the intentions just fade into the background when life gets busy, and life is always busy. You don't need to track every dollar for the rest of your life. You don't need a color-coded spreadsheet that takes an hour to update. You don't need an app that sends you guilt notifications every time you buy coffee. And you definitely don't need to turn money into a second full-time job. What you need is a routine. Something boring, something repeatable, something you do every single time you get paid, no matter how busy life gets. Not because it's exciting, but because it works. A routine that takes 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're being thorough, and then you're done. You don't have to think about it again until the next paycheck. This isn't about motivation. Motivation fades. Motivation is great when you're feeling inspired and energized and ready to take on the world, but most of life doesn't happen in those moments. Most of life happens when you're tired, distracted, overwhelmed, and just trying to get through the day. That's when structure matters. That's when a boring, predictable routine saves you. The reason complicated budgets fail isn't because they're bad ideas. It's because they require you to make financial decisions constantly all month long, often at the worst possible times, when you're stressed, when you're hungry, when you've already made 1,000 other decisions that day and you just don't have the mental energy left to care about whether this purchase fits into your budget. A routine that happens once, right after you get paid, removes all of that. You make the important decisions when your mind is fresh, and then the rest of the month, you just live your life. The decisions have already been made. The boundaries are already set. You're not relying on willpower or discipline in the moment. You're relying on the system you built when you actually had the energy to think clearly. Here's the uncomfortable truth, and this might sting a little. Responsible people struggle more with this than reckless ones because responsible people assume they'll figure it out later. They trust themselves to make good decisions in the moment. They think, I don't need to plan this out right now. I'm smart enough to handle it as things come up. And that makes sense. You've been handling things your whole life. You've made it this far. You're capable. You've proven that over and over again. So why wouldn't you trust yourself to manage your money as you go? But here's what responsible people don't see coming. There's a quiet pride in saying, I've got this. A confidence that feels earned because it is earned. You've handled hard things before. You've figured stuff out. You've managed, and that confidence makes it easy to skip the boring work of planning because planning feels like something people who aren't as capable need to do. But money decisions don't fail because of bad intentions. They fail because of timing. When money is available and unassigned, it slowly gets absorbed by daily life, by things that feel necessary, by small conveniences that don't seem like a big deal, by upgrades that only cost a little more, by things you genuinely need but didn't plan for because planning felt unnecessary at the time. Responsible people trust their judgment, and that trust becomes the problem because judgment doesn't matter when there's no structure to support it. You can have perfect judgment and still watch your money disappear simply because you're making decisions at the wrong time, when you're tired, when you're distracted, when life is pulling you in 12 different directions at once. The confidence that got you this far can actually work against you here because it makes you believe you don't need a system. And that belief costs you month after month in ways you don't fully see until you're staring at your bank account, wondering what went wrong. This video isn't about getting rich fast. It's not about doubling your income or finding the perfect investment or some secret strategy that Wall Street doesn't want you to know. It's about control. Because without control, more money just creates bigger leaks. I've seen people get raises and somehow end up more stressed than before. I've seen people make decent money and still live paycheck to paycheck, not because they're bad with money, but because the leaks scale with the income. More money just means more things quietly slipping through the cracks. I've lived this myself. Years ago, I got a significant pay increase. Not life-changing money, but enough that I thought a lot of my financial stress would just disappear. And for about a month, it did. Everything felt easier. I stopped worrying about small purchases. I felt like I had breathing room for the first time in a long time. Then I looked at my account a few months later and realized I was in the exact same position I'd been in before the raise. Same stress, same confusion, same question. Where did it go? The number was bigger, but the problem was identical because I never fixed the structure. I just poured more money into a broken system and expected different results. Control is what lets you breathe. It's what gives you options. It's what keeps one unexpected expense from turning into a crisis that derails your whole month. And it's what separates people who feel okay about money from people who feel like they're constantly drowning. You don't build wealth by hoping money sticks around. You build it by telling money where to go before it has a chance to wander off. In The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel explains that financial success has very little to do with intelligence and everything to do with behavior. How people act around money matters far more than what they know. You can understand compound interest, know the difference between good debt and bad debt. Read every financial book ever written and still struggle if your behavior doesn't match your knowledge. This is one of those moments. Knowing what to do isn't the problem. Most people already know they should have a plan when they get paid. They know they should set money aside. They know they should be more intentional. The information is out there. The problem is doing it consistently. And consistency only happens when the system is simple enough to survive real life. Not perfect life, not the life where everything goes according to plan, real life. The life where things come up, where you're tired, where you're distracted, where you just want to get through the day without thinking too hard. People love exciting financial advice, big promises, bold strategies, things that feel impressive, get rich quick schemes, aggressive investment tactics, complicated multi-step plans that require discipline, focus, and perfect execution. But impressive systems usually collapse under pressure. Boring systems survive. A boring routine that runs every payday, even when life is messy, will outperform any complex plan you can't stick to. That's not exciting. Nobody's going to make a movie about someone who moves money around the same way every 2 weeks, but that's exactly why it works, because it doesn't require inspiration. It doesn't require motivation. It just requires showing up and doing the same thing over and over again. Boring is reliable. Boring doesn't fail when you're tired. Boring doesn't collapse when life gets chaotic. Boring just keeps working in the background, quietly building the kind of stability that exciting plans promise but rarely deliver. Let's clear this up before it gets misunderstood. The goal is not to be perfect. You're going to mess up sometimes. Everyone does. You're going to have a month where you forget. A month where something unexpected comes up and throws everything off. A month where you just don't feel like dealing with it. That's not failure. That's life. The goal is consistency. Doing the same boring thing every payday, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like thinking about money, even when life is busy and you have 100 other things on your mind, you do it anyway. Not because you're motivated, but because it's what you do, like brushing your teeth, like locking your door when you leave, like any other routine that matters. That's how normal people win with money, not by being perfect, but by being predictable, by creating a system so simple and so boring that it becomes automatic. So you're not relying on willpower or discipline or having a good day. You're just following the routine. Same as always. This isn't about cutting joy out of your life. It's not about saying no to everything you enjoy. It's not about living like a monk and never spending money on anything fun. And it's definitely not about guilt. It's about awareness, about understanding why your money feels like it's burning a hole in your account every month, about realizing that this isn't some personal failing or character flaw, about seeing that the problem isn't permanent and it's not unfixable. You don't need to earn twice as much. You don't need a financial advisor or a degree in economics. You don't need to become a different person. You need to stop letting your paycheck drift. You need to give your money a job the moment it arrives so it doesn't go looking for one on its own. That's it. That's the whole thing. And it starts in the first 24 hours after you get paid. If this made sense to you, subscribe. Not because this channel will hype you up or make you feel like you can conquer the world, but because it will keep you grounded. Money doesn't need motivation speeches. It doesn't need hype. It needs boring systems that work when you're not paying attention. And don't forget to click the video on screen. In the next one, I'll show you how to start breathing again by building your emergency fund, the part that actually gives you peace of mind, not just numbers, the thing that keeps one bad week from turning into a financial disaster. Do the boring stuff. It works.